Hi, I'm going to speak in English while doing my presentation, then I'm going to answer my questions in the questions you have in German. So, 2.5 years ago, I set myself on a journey to understand if it's possible to have a reality where businesses exist on a planet that is healthy and are successful at the same time. It turned out that this was quite of a complicated question, and it led to an intensive investigation, which required to understand what each stakeholder was thinking in order to respond to the climate change crisis. It turned out that everyone had a different opinion. Businesses were saying that they don't necessarily understand what's their responsibility when it comes to climate change fighting. Individuals thought that they have to buy responsibly, but more change their ways of behaving, change their habits. NGOs were thinking that they have to implement projects on the ground, and governments were saying that they're going to change the policies, but they still think that they need the time to discuss it. And it turned out that it was quite clear the different stakeholders had a different perspective, and it was never about collaboration. The investigation continued into understanding actually what the data was saying. Why? Because the data quite often is reliable, and there's a lot of it out there that we don't use to understand what we're actually facing as a crisis. We started with the Plan A team looking into these 6 themes: wildlife, oceans, forests, sustainable living, sustainable energy, and waste management, with the aim to understand what are the biggest problems on this planet and how do we solve them? Who are the actors that deserve attention, funding, and network access? We looked at these topics, but we didn't stop there. We looked at stress levels on flora and fauna, economic levels, emission levels, projected and historical weather data, projected and historical climate data, and also how the different industries were responding, what kind of policies we were taking into our systems. And it turned out that there were 3 big problems, and these are the hypotheses behind Plan A. The first hypothesis that is really strongly linked also to what Tom, who's speaking after me, what he's doing is related, is the fact that we do not rely enough on science. We do not use enough science to be able to respond to the issues that we face in society. And this is thanks to the fact that science is not communicated well, and it's not easy for us to understand what actually science is telling us in a practical way. How do I change my life as a citizen, as an individual, as a family, as a business, to be able to respond to the climate change crisis? On a second point, which is incredibly significant, businesses are responsible for 70% of emissions on this planet. What does this mean? They have to be in the center of fighting climate change. It turned out that they were not, because the data was confirming that they were not. And on a final point, there was the need for a collaborative approach, because any data that we would look at was confirming that if we only take into account what businesses are doing and rely on them only solving the climate change crisis, or only on the scientists, or only on politicians, we're never going to get to the final result that we want, which is addressing this crisis effectively for the whole planet. What did we do? I'm going to show you what Plan A does and how Plan A has been able to attract a big community and also a lot of businesses who work with us. We've built a Plan A Atlas, which is essentially an encyclopedia of climate change. You can go and click on any country on this planet, learn about the climate change agenda of each country, see what kind of projects exist out there, and find a way to act on an individual level in your own life. Not necessarily just speaking about the grandiose statements that can come out of a website or an article that explains to you the 5 things you need to change in your life, but even smaller things, you know, something that can help you immediately become more sustainable. The second thing that we built to address the issue with science not being communicated well was to build an academy. The Plan A Academy is a place where we disseminate scientific knowledge, and we allow for individuals to connect themselves on a practical and more day-to-day level to the latest scientific research and be able to adapt this into their life as, regardless if you're a politician, regardless if you're a business person, regardless if you're an NGO. The final thing that we built is actually our, because everything else is for free, but the business side of what we do is a platform for businesses that allows them to calculate, monitor, and offset their carbon footprint. And it also allows them to build a sustainability action plan. One of the biggest issues businesses face today is the fact that they might have the biggest wish that comes maybe from the management, maybe from the employees, to change something about the way the company functions, to make themselves more sustainable, but they don't know where to start. And what exists out there on the planet at the moment is a sustainability action plan building partner that can be charging you a few million just to do a top-down approach kind of response to the fact that you need a sustainability strategy, or you have an offsetting platform that can tell you what is the number for you to clean your consciousness and make yourself feel better about whatever your footprint is. We wanted to make sure that businesses actually understand their responsibility along the way, find ways to reduce their carbon footprint, and take responsibility for whatever they're creating as emissions today. This platform has given us the opportunity to build a massive community and all of the other things that I showed. So these are kind of our results for the last 6 months. Plan A has existed for 2 years, but we took our time to build our algorithm and to also build our platform. We have a community of over 100,000 people. We are based in around Checkpoint Charlie, so predominantly the community is from Europe. We have funded environmental projects, and the equivalent of the money is $500,000. As of today, it's 600,000. We've worked with 100 businesses alongside with Delivery Hero, some really big and really small names, Eventbrite. I can continue listing all the companies that we've been working with. We have been supporting not only financially, but also within a network, 3,000 NGOs. All of these NGOs are related to all these 6 teams that I mentioned. And we work with 150 scientists who provide us with data and give us the opportunity to learn more about what are the biggest issues on this planet. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Ja, thank you so much. Und jetzt öffnen wir das Ganze. Ihr könnt wieder Fragen stellen. Genau, es kann auf Deutsch geantwortet werden. Bernd geht mit dem Mikro rum, damit man euch auch hört da draußen. Genau, gibt es denn Fragen? Da, direkt eine.
Would you describe yourself as a consulting business or rather as an NGO? Or something
Neither. Plan A is the startup. Our platform is automated, so we don't need to do anything with regards to kind of how the businesses monitor themselves. We have the benefit of having developed a really personal relationship with the businesses and the individuals, so this can make us look like a consulting business, but the problem of climate change requires a personal attention. It cannot be just an automated approach because you have to understand the level of sophistication that people have with regards to sustainability. So I would say we are a tech startup with a personal approach.
Gibt es dazu noch weitere Fragen? Gibt es eine nächste Frage? Noch kurz die Möglichkeit. Hat noch jemand irgendwas, was er über das Projekt? Da hinten direkt, da steht das Mikro schon richtig.
Obviously, you did a lot of research about climate and current problems, especially with the focus of businesses. And something that politicians really like to talk about are these low-hanging fruits. And my question would be whether you think there are still a lot of low-hanging fruits in fighting climate change.
Unfortunately, I don't think there are many low-hanging fruits. There's a necessity for a really, I wouldn't say radical, but there's a more pragmatic approach to how we approach climate change. There's a lot of big words that are being said out there on a daily basis. And one thing that I think is the most complicated, non-low-hanging fruit is the fact that there's lack for a wish for collaboration. on a European level, on a world level, everyone, and when you look at the data, because this is what we do, the data shows you quite clearly that the issues that are being created on another side of the world are the responsibility of our side of the world. And if we don't start talking about the issues of climate change in this kind of a perspective and move away only for speaking about the local level of issues, the emissions there are a lot more dramatic in comparison to what is happening in Europe. So if we actually want to save humanity, which is kind of the problem in hand, it's a lot more about speaking on a global level what the problems are. So low-hanging fruit do exist, and this can get us going, but it's not going to solve anything enough for us to be able to, I would say, survive.
Gibt es vielleicht noch eine letzte Frage? Dann, okay.
Thank you. You said that businesses should be at the core of the discussion about climate change. Do you mean by that businesses should be the target group of, for example, political fraternity, or should businesses themselves fight climate change? What do you mean by that?
Your first comment, I think they should be, I wouldn't use the word scrutiny, but definitely they should be the target of a lot of policies. And why is that? Because we as consumers, in any case, influence a lot of what companies do. You can see how many sustainable products are coming out on a daily basis. But the reality is that up until the point the core is not covered, we still, when we go to the supermarket, and maybe it's not we here, but many other people are going to quite often prefer the cheaper choice, or the choice that is covered in plastic because of the fact that it's been optimized for traveling from one side of the world to the other. So I think, and this is also what the data shows, businesses have the capacity, if they switch off certain, how can I say, activities, or they change certain ways of operating, they would have the capacity to influence a lot quicker reduction in CO2 emissions. And businesses should still do their business, but they have to do it in a responsible way, and this requires paying prices that we have not been paying for a long time.
Dann, ich hatte schon eben, aber okay, dann nehmen wir noch eine letzte Frage und danach würde ich weiterleiten.
Follow-up question to your remark. I mean, I understand that the businesses should be the targets because they have the emissions, but let's take your example, plastic wrap. In California, plastic wrap was banned as a regulation, first on local basis, and now it's spreading for California. And then what happens is the businesses say we can't use plastic, we'll use paper. They use paper bags, but paper bags have higher energy costs and are less sustainable because the Americans only use them one time. And so if most regulations from politics either make things more expensive for consumers and consumers are unhappy because it goes against their interests, or in such cases, it's not the smartest innovative approach, what the politicians set as regulations, because they have other side effects or maybe they make the effects worse. So do you have data to back up that targeting businesses actually, if the politicians make up the rules for the businesses, that is actually the innovative force? And other question, has your data provided better approaches, alternative approaches to politicians banning singular products?
I can go back to my comment about collaboration. I fully agree with you with regards to the fact that substitutes, sometimes if they're not properly calculated in terms of life cycle analysis, can be more detrimental to the planet. And this is where the science can come in and be really helpful. And this is where collaboration is really necessary, because I can give you hundreds of examples of wrapping, only wrapping, that is biodegradable. It's made out of fruit leaves and so on. And these are incredibly affordable technologies. And because of the fact that you go to a partner that potentially you know from before, you don't solve the problem. The problems, and I don't think politicians should be kind of building up themselves only the rules. There's a lot of knowledge out there that can be of help. So I would suggest, or not suggest, I would think that we need to rely on the knowledge that we have. It's not about making up stories. It's about seeing what's out there. And now there's so much innovation. There's so much innovation out there. And Berlin is one of the most fantastic places to be looking at these kinds of solutions. So I would say the case for politicians to make up the rules is actually not so dramatic if they end up talking to the right people to give them the right suggestions for kind of helpful products for the planet. Thank you.
Ja, vielen, vielen
Danke.
Dank. Dankeschön.